Good morning, PLO Order. Welcome to the new episode. And today's file name is Committed or Not, and we're going to talk about pod commitment. And it's mostly what it means to be pod committed. Everyone has heard it, and it's one of those old school poker terms. But there's a lot of misunderstanding of what it means to be pod committed when we are and when we are not. So let's get into it. Everyone has probably heard someone saying, or you have said, I can't vote here, I'm pod committed, and then put the rest of the chips in, and that's it. Now, what it means to be pod committed? Does it mean that you're pod committed when you have invested most of your chips? Or does it mean when you have less than 1/3 of your stack left? Another way to put it. Or does it mean that when the pot is so big that you just can't vote anymore? And I searched the internet for clarification of being pod committed. And very often it's said that when you go over the point of no return, like you cannot fold anymore. And pretty much that's it. But when is the point when you can fold? And pretty much all of these explanations here are wrong. They have truth in them, but they are not definite clarifications what it means to be pod committed. And being committed, in simple way, it means that you cannot fold even when you have the worst hand. And it's just a simple pot odds and equity situation. Like, you have certain equity versus opponent's range, and your pot odds are better than that, so you get it in, and you know the opponent has a better hand. It's that simple. And in my mind, we don't need the word pod committed anymore. That was many years ago, before any kind of equity calculators, or probably even before the term equity was invented in the old school poker, where people realized that there's so much money in the pot and I might win sometimes. Let's call it pod committed, because I cannot keep up the pot anymore. But nowadays, when we play range poker, we play versus range, not actual hand, unless opponent's range is one single hand. Sometimes even that can happen. But we play versus range, and if we face a bet or raise or shove, we are just playing mathematics. We compare our equity versus the range to the odds that the opponent's bet is giving us. And then it's either plus EV to call or minus EV. And being pod committed means that you're making plus EV decisions. It's that simple. But it's very often used to justify mental attachment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an important topic. And I'm going to show you a few hands on PokerTools about pod commitment, mental attachment, and so let's get it into here. First hand, we have pocket kings. Not the great ones, button opens. Now, these hands are made up to show certain spots. So we are not talking about should we 3-bet pocket kings or not. King 8-5 single suited or not. So don't get attached to that. It's just to clarify a certain situation. So we 3-bet kings, small blind versus button calls. We flop the top set, life is good. We bet half a pot, opponent calls. Turn is a 9. And now, in our strategy in this situation, we decide to bet 3/4. And opponent shoves. And now the question is, do we call? And as you see, the question doesn't include are we pod committed, because that term is so misleading. What we're going to do here, now, in modern poker, we keep opponent's range, And let's say his range is Jack 10. And versus that range, we have around 24% equity, and we needed out about 20.15% equity to call. So we have 24, we need 20, it's plus EV to call, even if the opponent shows us that he has a Jack 10. And in early days of poker, we didn't talk about button's range, our equity versus his range, range versus range. No. They just said that I need to pay $40 more in the pot of 200. I'm pot committed. And that was the easy way to say that I have equity versus my opponent's range to call. So it was that simple. Alright, let's see if we can find a second one. Second example. Button opens, we 3-bet this time. Ace Jack 10 9 double suited. Opponent calls and we flop the 13 out of wrap. Once again, life is good. We bet half a pot. And opponent raises full pot. And now the question is, are we committed or not? And you can't answer that until you keep opponent the range. Now, if we call, we will have $28 behind, and the pot is 144. So we have like 1/5 of a pot behind. So someone might think that, okay, we're pot committed. Sometimes we are not. And the deciding factor is button range. When he raises pot, if we have information, and we estimate that his range is a set, he wouldn't raise anything but the set, then we are not pot committed. Because if we call, and the turn is a 5, we're drawing dead versus full house. So we can save 28 BBs by just folding the turn. But if his range here on the flop is any pair with any kind of draw, I mean, we give him a wider range of sets, 2 pairs, King Jack 10, Queen Jack Jack, Ace King, wider range, then there are certain turns that we have equity versus his range and we need to call the turn. Even if the turn is 5, like if his range would be here on the flop, let's say it's King plus. We have 20% equity, and if he shoves here, we need 14% equity. It's in up here. So if his range is King plus, we have equity, even when we know that pretty much we never have the best hand. But if his range on the flop is 5-5 plus, then what happens is we need 14%, we have 0%, so we fold. So to answer the question, are we pot committed or not if we call on any turn, it depends on the opponent's range. Let's take, not this one, let's open up this one first. Oh, it's the same hand, but different explanation. What? Someone screwed up my hands. All right. Yeah, this is the same hand. We 3-bet, we bet half a pot, he raises, we call, and the turn is queen. Are we pot committed when he shoves? If his range on the flop is set, or even king queen plus, then we are drawing dead. But here's another hand. Pocket kings, and let's go back to the beginning. Button opens, we decide to 3-bet, and big blind decides to 4-bet. Button folds. Are we pot committed or not? If we call, and then the flop is anything, are we pot committed? If we call here, and let's make a random flop, then opponent has only $30 behind, he's a shorty. Are we committed to call any flop? So pay attention, opponent is 68 BB shorty who 4-bets. He will have only 30 chips behind. Very often I see people shoving kings here and saying, because I was already pot committed, because I already 3-bet 11.5 big blinds and he's shorty. But that's only part of the truth. Don't use term pot committed. Use term versus his range. I have enough equity to stack off. And his range is so wide that I cannot fold any flops. So, thinking equities. If his range is ace-ace, there's no way we can make profits by calling or shoving. Both of those are minus EV, so we have to fold. If his range is ace XXX, so we know that he always has an ace, we could just call, because he's going to stack off on any flop anyway, with only 30 blinds behind. But if the flop is ace high and we have nothing, we can still fold. Or flop is ace ace, we're drawing 2 out, or maximum we can fold. So the thing is, if there's even one flop where you can fold, but your opponent can't, and opponent is stacking off 100% of flops, then it's better to call than shove. Because if you shove pre-flop, it's same as stacking off on any flop, the outcome is the same. We don't achieve anything by seeing the flop. But if we can fold even some flops, opponent can, it's better to call. If it's the other way around, we can really fold flops, but opponent can, if his range is really wide, it's better to shove pre-flop. But the term being pot committed has nothing to do with anything here. So don't use that word. Or wordings, it's actually 2 words. But it doesn't do anything good. It doesn't explain why you stacked off. It doesn't tell you when to stack off. And as said earlier, it's about mental attachment. And what does it mean to be mentally attached to a hand? Well, actually it's a term I created myself. I haven't heard it anywhere else, so you heard it from me. But it means that at a certain point on the hand, you get the idea that I have the hand locked. I will win this hand, and you're already wondering what to do with all the money. So you get this idea to your head that you're going to win the hand. And then, board changes. But you can't get rid of the idea. And you cannot fold your hand, even when rational strategy would say, you're beat, you're done, fold the hand. In Hold'em, pocket aces pre-flop, 3-bet, stack off any flop. People do it in PLO, 3-bet aces, they already think they have won the hand, stack off any flop. Aces win only half of the times you 3-bet them, on average probably. So here's the situation. Button opens, we 3-bet, button calls, familiar situation. We flop the top set on King Queen 7. We bet half a pot, opponent calls, let's define a range, Turn is 8, it's a blank, we still have the nuts, we pot, and we already know that, okay, it's profitable for us. And opponent is a cunning bastard and just calls. And you all hate this situation. And as so often happens, the river is 10 of clubs. Now you had 28 blinds behind, pot is 144, you check, opponent shoves, and you can't get rid of the idea. You have the top set, you already have this idea that I won the hand. And then you're starting this inner talk where really small devil in your shoulder says that he might be bluffing. Oh, he could be bluffing. and then you call, and opponent shows the flush or a straight. You've been there. I've been there. And this is mental attachment. This is extreme example, but you will see it very often. You 4-bet kings, opponent 5 bets, shoves. In a way, you know he has aces, but you cannot fold because you already 4-bet your kings, and you talk yourself to stack of pre-flop aces versus kings. You have a set, river completes a flush, opponent bets. You tell yourself that he might be bluffing with a straight draw. Now be honest, how often he has that straight draw? And here, the annoying river completes all the straights, and it completes the flush. So all the draws get there. If he has a made hand like king, queen, king, then he's never bluffing it on the river. He's happy to go to showdown. So his range is crushing you. Of course, you can always find an example hand that he is bluffing here. But it's really hard. And in reality, his range beats you 100% of times, or 99.9. But you need here to be right 14% of times, and you're not. Or you need to have a best hand 14% of times, and you don't have it. So, sometimes, when we flop the set, or we flop the straight, or we make the nut flush, we raise flop, we bet turn, river pairs the board, an opponent makes a check raise or something, and you just don't believe him because you don't want to fold your hand. So make sure that whatever you do with your old nuts, which is no longer the nuts, don't base your decision on your mental attachment. Base it on opponent's range. And yes, sometimes he might be bluffing here, and you would fold the best hand. But the question is he folding here? I mean, is he bluffing here often enough? That's the question. And in poker, we are never 100% right. But we do everything by estimation. So don't get mentally attached. That's a great way to lose money in PLO. Especially when stacks get deeper. You flop the nuts and you just can't fold it. Even when mathematics and ranges would say that it's a fold. So often people here would say that, oh, I'm already pot committed, so I'm going to call. But you don't call. You have to fold. Because it's range that beats you. So, in short, I hope no one ever uses phrase pot committed in your life when you're playing poker and explaining hands. You can use it in jokes. You can use it in some other aspects of life. But in poker, don't use pot commitment because it's a bad phrasing. We play versus ranges. We play with equities. We play with pot odds. We don't play with pot commitments. Alright? So, a little shorter video this time. Not so much strategy, but important topic. And also the topic of mental attachment. Don't fall into that one. Don't lose money because of it. Alright? I will see you on the next video. More strategy, more hardcore numbers that time. Have a great week. Bye-bye.